Howdy everybody. Welcome back to another SMA video. So, we got the fourth video in our boxing basics breakdown series. So we are taking a look at the boxer's hook. So we're gonna break this down in a few different ways today. So we're gonna take a look at just the technique itself, the very basic way I like to teach it to people. Then we'll be looking at the way that we would throw it in an actual boxing match. So we'll go from a basic concept of just how the arm moves and how the body moves into a more detailed breakdown. And then we'll also be breaking down the ways that we like to use our hook, whether we're punching towards the body of our opponent or we're going more up towards the head. So, starting out, just breaking the hook down. So again, when we were doing the jab and the cross, those ones you always are using the same side hand. So what I mean by that is the jab is always the front hand. The cross is always your backhand. So if I switch my feet, the hands doing the job change because you got a new front hand and a new backhand. But it's not like you're gonna call this a cross and this a cross. That's not the way that those punches work. So the difference though with a hook and then also with the uppercut is you can use either hand to throw a hook or an uppercut. So when I'm doing the hook, I can do a hook with my front hand. I can also do a hook with the backhand. Then when I switch my feet, I can still go front hand hook and a backhand hook. So when we do uppercuts, it'll be the same thing, backhand or front hand uppercuts. Now, in sparring matches or boxing competitions, there are people that throw both hands, but I would say that the front hand hook is used more often than the backhand, though that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we typically do more practice with our front hand hook than we do our backhand, but as we go through and are learning our boxing combos, there are definitely times where you will throw the backhand as well as the front hand. So breaking this punch down, we're gonna practice the front hand hook today in this video, and then later in other videos as you learn other combos, we'll take more of a look at the backhand. But today, we're looking at the front hand. So, starting out with the absolute basic. So, most people, when they do this punch, they try to do too much with their arms. Really, your arm is just kind of the tool that you're using, and it's really the body that's actually causing the punch. So, you're not really extending the arm like we did on a jab and on our cross. But what we're doing is just putting our hand in the position for the hook, and then we're twisting our body to actually do the punch. So my arm really isn't doing a whole lot. It's really that turning of the body that's doing everything. So the way I like to teach people this one is from our stands, what I want to do is just kind of bring my hand over like I'm holding like a cup of coffee, right? And then what I want to do is I'm going to do the pivot like we did with our cross, but this time I'm doing it with my front leg. So my front heel is going to come up off the ground more, and then I'm going to pivot this foot as I twist my hips, and I'm going to pour that coffee out. So I pivot, I'm going to pour my coffee out onto the ground, and then I'm going to come right back into my set stance there. So once again, I'm going to grab my cup of coffee here. I'm going to pivot, twist my hips, pour that coffee out, and then I'm gonna come right back to my stance. Now, that's our basic. We're gonna move to the more detailed version because in a boxing match, and this one we'll practice on both sides. Now, in the last section, we didn't really switch sides, but again, the steps would be the same. If I was here, then my right hand would come down, grabbing that cup of coffee. I'd pivot my right foot, which is the front, and twist my hips as I pour that coffee out. and then I come back into my stance here. So it would be the same. We just didn't spend a lot of time practicing that. So we're gonna go with a little bit more detail of it on both sides for this section. So if I'm in an actual boxing match or a sparring match here in the karate school, when you get higher in belt rank, if I'm gonna throw a hook in the pun or in the match, then I don't necessarily want to drop this hand down like we practice. That's just a good way to learn the motion of this punch, is hold the cup of coffee, pour it out, and then come back. Really what I want to do is keep that hand up. But what if I'm throwing that punch, I do want to because if, grabbing that coffee, I got to turn my body a little to grab it, which then allows me to turn my body a bit more to pour it out, which does give me more power on this punch. So what I want to do is not drop the hand, but to get that twist in the body. So from here, what I want to do is I want to twist my body over, and notice this, we call this our shield, right? So just like in the olden days when people had sword and shield, they would actually put that shield in front of them and have the sword, so they were protected from any attacks coming in, and then they would move the shield to then attack, and then they'd bring their shield back. So in this position, my arm becomes my shield. So when I do that, I'm gonna turn, and I have this shield all right here. So I don't want my arm open, because I don't want you to hit me in my body, I don't want you to hit me in my head. I wanna turn, I create my shield facing right at my opponent, and then as I turn back, that's where I'm coming out. Notice I'm kind of holding that cup of coffee. I pivoted, my arm is gonna come through as I hit and finish here. Now, if I do this right, my elbow should be pointing at my opponent. Then I come right back into that stance. So once again, I turn, I throw my hook, my elbow's pointing at my opponent at the end, and then I come back into my boxing stance. All right, one more time, then we'll practice on the other side. So right from here, same idea. One more time. Turn, hook, pull it all the way through so the elbow's pointing at the target, and then back to our set stance. Now, other side. So all the details are the same, we're just gonna use our right hand for the hook this time. So I'm in my boxing stance, got my telephone, got my microphone. Now, from here, again, I'm gonna turn my body. Now this arm is my shield, and then I throw the hook, I'm coming out, I'm holding that cup of coffee, I'm pulling through, I hit, and then I'm coming through, pointing my elbow at my opponent. Come back into my stance, right? So I turn, come through, hook, back into my stance. One more time, I turn, throw my hook, hit, elbow pointing at my opponent, back into that stance. Notice that I'm getting a lot of turn in that pivot, and then back, right? So let's do one more on this side. Ready? And we turn, we come through with our hook, pointing our elbow at our target, and back into our stance. Now, final part to our video here is we just want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we hold our hand for hitting on our hook. So we always want to use, whenever we're punching a target, whether it's pads, whether it be in a sparring match and we're punching towards our opponent, or in a real life self-defense situation, we always want to hit with the two biggest knuckles on our hand. That's the knuckle of our index finger and our middle finger. We don't really want to hit with the knuckles of our ring or our pinky finger, because those knuckles and the bones that back them up are a lot weaker than the big knuckles. So I don't want to break my hand when I'm punching pads and practicing my skills. So we want to always make sure that we're hitting with those two big knuckles, whether it's on the the jab, the cross, and then as we're coming through with our hook and with our uppercuts. So the only thing that changes with our hand in the hook is if I'm punching towards my opponent's body or if I'm punching towards their head. So when I'm throwing the head hook, so in the last section when we were working on the turn and then coming through, I was holding that cup of coffee and then I was pouring the coffee out, so my hand was turning flat as I was coming through and hitting. Now that is the way that we want to actually hit our target when we're aiming towards the head. That allows us to kind of attack the more vital areas of the head without punching the really strong bones. Like our cheekbones are really strong. They're much stronger bones than in our hand. The skull itself is a very, very strong bone. So I don't want to come through and like end up with my hand up and down punching into the face, because now my knuckles are hitting a much stronger bone and that could break my hand. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting the less strong bones, the ones that have less reinforcement, so I can hit my target and not hurt my hand. So with my hand flat, I can hit the chin without hitting any of the much stronger bones. So when we're going towards the head of our opponent, we want to do that turn, and as I'm coming out, I'm going to roll that punch into this flat position as I hit and come through, and then resetting there. Now, that works really good for the head, but one of my instructors who was the light heavyweight kickboxing champion of the world, he was actually the very first light heavyweight kickboxing champion of the world, he always did that style hook to the head, but then whenever he was punching towards the body, he was keeping the thumb on top of the hand. So instead of turning it over for a body punch, he was keeping his hand up. And the way he always explained it to me was that when you're punching into the ribs, your knuckles fit beautifully kind of in between all those ribs. So instead of just like hitting here and just kind of attacking one rib, you're actually attacking a whole lot when you're using that hand up and down. So when we do a body hook, which does come into some of our combinations later, then I want to do the same thing. I turn, but then as I pivot and I hit, I'm going to keep my hand in this position. Notice my hand is much lower than up here, right? And I'm going to turn and attack the body, pulling through, so my elbow is again pointing to my target, and then I come right back into my set stance. So let's practice that a couple of times on both sides, just going more the body style. So we turn, we're going to pivot, attack the body, pull through so the elbow is pointing at our target, and then we come back. We do that again, turn, attack the body all the way through, and back. We turn, attack the body, and back. All right, let's do a couple on the other side. So right from here, and we turn, we attack the body, pull through, and back. We turn, attack the body, pull it through, and back. Turn, body, back. Turn, body, back. So that's a pretty solid breakdown. Again, there are some other details that we do with it, but just breaking the basics down, how we hold our hand, how we do the punch in general, how we would actually set up for the punch and not leave ourselves vulnerable. So again, hope you got a lot out of this video. Thanks for training, and we'll see you in the next one.